Money tree. Yeah. And every time it changes, money comes to me. It all flows in so abundantly. From the top, left, right, and up under me. You're
listening to the Play Space Podcast with Dr. Gregory Bell and Marc Clarke.
Yes, and welcome to the Play Space Podcast. And every time you see us, it's ching, ching, ching. Because we're putting those positive spirits out there. Those positive affirmations in the universe. What's going on, Doc?
What's up, Marc Clarke? How you feeling, my brother?
I'm good, man, and welcome to another exciting episode, bruh. So, this is our third episode, and we still are letting everybody know who we are. And so, Doc, you go ahead and start. You go ahead and start. Who are you?
I am a proud father of two daughters and a grandson, and a proud son of parents who are celebrating this year 67 years of marriage. And I have two brothers and a sister, and I'm so proud just to be a part of that family. And I have an extended family in this DMV area, DMV being DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I am an educator. I am an administrator. I'm an entrepreneur. And most of all, I'm a play space advocate, having fun each and every day.
What I'm talking about. And I am Marc Clarke. Again, I am too. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I got three lovely daughters. Been married for over 20 years. And, I'm a media guy. And at the end of the day, I'm excited too to be a part of Play Space. And then the next logical question is, well, what is Play Space? Well, Play Space, Doc, you tell me. I like how you say it. Well, I'd say Play Space is a place. So we are grown-ups, but in every grown-up, there's a kid who wants to play. And in these very challenging times, it's important that we engage that space that we do play, because if you don't, you can get overwhelmed and bogged down with all of the stressors and the energies that happen. And I know, Doc, you actually technically you're an expert in this, so you know technically what play and the importance of play. So maybe give us throw a little salve on top of that on the expertise piece.
Well, I'll tell you what happens with Play Space is that we think about it in terms of growing up in that sandbox, or playing in your backyard, playing in your front yard, or playing in your basement. Hidden in each adult is a child who wants to play. And so for me and Marc, we want to play, but we want to play with the idea of the mind, the time that you spend, and the dime that you make in terms of your space. And we also know that whole dynamic comes because in your space, sometimes you have to be alone and sometimes you're with other people. But the more important thing is that you must enjoy each and every day, whichever space you're in, enjoy that just the same.
That's what I'm talking about. And so we'll be talking about everything from politics to sports. We're talking about music. We'll have interviews. We really just have a space for grown folks and children. I mean, it's a safe space for everybody. And so as we actually get into Black History Month, I think it's important that we also, for Play Space, also feature people that we admire, people maybe unsung heroes in Black history, because, we both probably think the same way in that it's not really Black history, it's history. And at the end of the day, we kind of focus on it because it's been overlooked. And so, I'll start it off, Doc. So for me today, I want to share somebody, again, I only met him for a few years. My grandfather, Emily Foster, I was born in 1966. He passed away in 1970, and he was born in 1886. And it's so crazy, Doc, how when you start to put something in the universe, how things come to you. So before the show, I was looking for his obituary, and I couldn't find it. But then I found this article in a paper from 1969, which I said, man, he must have spoke to me from the other side. And in the article, Doc, now at the time, he was 83 years old, and they were doing an article about Black newspapers. And my grandfather, who lived in Springfield, Illinois, and he had a newspaper, the Springfield Chronicle. He had a drum and bugle corps. He also had a trade school where he taught printing. And even though I was just a baby, I think there's definitely, when you're raised in a certain environment, it rubs off on you. My grandfather, who, like I said, was born in the 1800s, never worked for anybody else. He also had his law certificate, because back then it was a certificate. He had 5 kids, and he was a self-made man. And my mother used to always say he was a race man. And I know, Doc, you know that term. That's kind of an old school term. But Absolutely. What does it mean? It basically is a brother who supports his race, who stands behind and does everything he can do to move the race forward, right? And so I saw this article, first time I've ever saw this, and I thought it was just a great find. In the article, he says, and I quote, "I think as time goes by, the Negro Press will gradually fade out. When the time comes that the black man and the white man will go to church together and worship together, the black newspaper will not be needed." Now, it's interesting. So that's 1969, Doc. And it's, again, it really hit me because I was like, wow, that's deep. And actually, so that was 1 year before he passed away. And that was the feeling that change was on the horizon. So I know he would probably be shocked that in 2021, Doc, we are still dealing with the race problem. It's almost frustrating, and you know what it is? It's really sad, to be honest, because again, I think that generation probably thought by now we would have at least had wrapped our mind around that thing. So that's what I'm going to honor today for Black History. My grandfather, Inman E. Foster. What about you, Doc?
Well, happy Black History Month to you. My two people that I want to recognize would be my mother and my father, because while we think about African-American history and we think about the celebration, the one thing that I can say is that I have been able to celebrate my parents for 64 years. And while they have not necessarily been in the press, they have always been able to stress positive values of honesty, openness, and transparency. They have been role models. They have been able to take a family of 3 African-American boys and 1 young lady as a sister to be able to pull that together in terms of the 3 major principles that I operate from: faith, family, and friends. And so when I think about what my parents were able to do as impactors and influencers on my life, see, it was not easy to be a parent of 4 children in your 20s. They were born during the Depression in the 1930s. And the world that they were raised in, as you think about depression, economic depression, they would use the term, as you begin to think about who you want to be, the richness and the wealth of who you are, Gregory, is to focus in on serving others and not necessarily needed to be paid for the economics that is associated with what you do, but more to be the role model of your actions. So therefore, they influenced me in this area and led me to being able to be an educator. What better profession to think about during Black History Month than my parents, who did not have the credentials in education, while my dad had credentials in business and public administration, and my mom had it in the area of federal government expertise. They really had expertise in tender, loving care. So during Black History Month, I want to celebrate them because I know that because of the race issue, it is significant for us to know that institutional racism exists. We know that we are stronger with our diversity, our inclusion, and our equity. And my parents are my leaders during Black History Month 2021.
All right. And again, we'll be celebrating Black History Month and those people that are heroes, those that we know and those that we didn't know, those that influenced us, and even people, hey, and even to keep it real, for Black History Month, it's not just all Black folks either. It's not Absolutely. Just all Black folks either, because it took a lot of help from everybody to and as we still try to push forward on getting over the racial hump. So, Doc, next I want to get in on this COVID. That's something else that is not going away and that we're dealing with, and it's COVID. And it seems like every week there's something different, if it's the vaccines or lack thereof, or if the conversation about should the kids go back or not go back. And I want to tap in on something that, again, is your expertise. And I know people like I think our first broadcast, they're like, man, you were setting Doc up. It was like you were interviewing him. But I understand that. But it's like, because, again, Doc, you have a lot of expertise in these issues that we're talking about. So I kind of like set it up because I just love to hear you give us a little deeper insight. You know, it's like at the barbershop, but you know what I'm saying? But you go a little deeper. And so in those areas, forgive me if it almost feels like I'm interviewing you, but it's really not that. I just love the fact that you can give us that information because you studied it, you know? And so It's the same thing with what's going on with COVID. What I'm noticing is COVID is making us all figure out some things. When I say figure out, learn. You know, if it's virtual techniques with Zoom, if it's even like with parents, we're being dragged into our child's school situation from, you know, learning the new techniques that they're taking on that are different from ours when you're talking about math, or, you know, adjusting to the fact that they don't learn cursive writing anymore. So we're all kind of in this learning space. Again, your expertise, and I want to talk about that, the different learning styles, Doc. So can you break that down for us and give us some tips and help us understand what we probably don't even understand as we are learning new things?
Yes, Mark. And let me say to you that as we begin to think about the whole development of this concept of our Place Space podcast, what we want you to know is that we are in the process of trying to develop to be the best that we can, to share the voice that we have. And certainly as we begin to think about topics like COVID, let's talk more immediately about decision making. When we think about learning styles, we know that people have different ways of learning. Some people have the opportunity to learn by doing. Most of us learn by doing, but sometimes we don't want to take that risk or make that decision. We learn by observing, we learn by listening, we learn by laughing, assessing, and reflecting. So as you begin to think about where we are, this COVID situation is really about where we are with health and safety. Really, we are dealing with this because of the health epidemic. We don't know who's carrying what. We don't know the environments in which we go in. Who is exposed? What we want to expose our children to, though, is that we want to expose them to the concept that change is part of life. And we are now in a changed environment where instead of going to school, not everyone across the country is out of school. Some people are in school. And then some, depending on what part and how the COVID has impacted them, are not in school. But there are three major things that I think we have learned from this, is that if we practice the basic fundamentals of washing our hands, putting on the mask, and 6 feet apart, then we will be able to deal with those guidelines that we know that the CDC is providing for us. But we also know that people have to manage the program based on the practices that are going to be healthy and safe. And so as we think about that, the decision also for you having to go back to work, it's not just about the students. It's also about adults who have to go back and being exposed to environments that are not necessarily the highest of cleanliness in terms of hygiene. And if you think about what that really means that we are learning by doing, we're growing as we're going, and we have to make decisions based on health and safety.
And it's so interesting. It's like that. I remember the day I got over the hump, because I think that was the thing about Americans. Like, we're so used to having all these freedoms. And I remember I found myself, you know how you kind of, when you're raggedy with the mask, not really like doing it like you're supposed to be doing it 100%, kind of like hitting and missing. Then that day came when you're like all in, you know, but you look back on it and you kind of kick yourself, because what would have happened if we all got all in on that first day, you know? And it's like you said, Doc, people, the officials and the science and the doctors and the leadership, they knew something we didn't know. And because we didn't know it, or we didn't listen and didn't follow and didn't learn, we had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, and Mark, I think you bring a great point in that one, because the more we know and understand, the more we can apply. But you made a great point, Mark, and that is the collaboration effort about communicating and coordinating efforts between where we are politically, where we are with education, where we are economically, and the faith communities, the medical community with the science. This is really about science and the impact that knowledge base is able to help us to better understand. And I always like to say the common sense approach. Let's have it so it's practical and small steps so people can take small bites and then make the decision based on what's relevant, engaging, and meaningful for their particular situation.
And so, Doc, this is the wrap up, but I had to hit this one because you called me. I hadn't heard the story, hadn't seen the story. You said, man, did you hear what Dick Vermeil said about Watson?
Well, I think they changed his diapers. Okay. His contract, nowhere in his contract does it say that he's involved in making the decisions who coaches or who leads the organization. And I think when players get outside the role of what they really are, he's a great NFL football player and always has been a great kid. But I think he just shuts his mouth and becomes a better football player and lead the football team and let the leaders of the organization lead him. Well, to me, he's going to only play one place. Now, I don't have any more knowledge about Houston. I used to have a little bit more because I knew the head coach. But I just don't see him playing any place else. And I see him calming down, maturing a little bit, and go be a good football player and earn the money they're paying.
Well, Mark, here's the position that I take on that. When we think about people's mindset, their time set, and their dime set, it really comes down to be real simple. When someone who is 80 years old gives their opinion, we have to do like Aretha Franklin. We have to respect that. Do we have to accept it? No. Because the time set, if we think about when Dick Vermeil was in the NFL and making decisions, just like in corporations, we have management, just like in schools. You have administrators, but you also have others that have voices, and students have voices, employees have voices. So we want to keep in mind the time frame in which he was operating as a coach and the talents, abilities, skills, and knowledge of where we are now with Brother Watson. As we begin to think about what he's doing, and he's not even 25 yet, he is marketable, which brings about a time set. Time set now, he's marketable, and the dime set allows him then to dictate that if you're not happy, you have a mindset to say that it's time for you to go make a dime somewhere else. But it comes down to what is said with the words and the behavior of the people that you work with. In the working climate, we have to be sensitive to the diversity within an environment. And diversity is not just about race, but it's also about how we think, how we feel, and what we believe. So I respect his statements. I don't accept it because I know that the decision about why he does not want to be there is because it's time to move on. And transition is sometimes difficult for you, for me, and for individuals when you deal with institutions.
Well, my friends, the old clock on the wall says it's that time. Play space. Play space ain't over. You all have a space to play. But this episode is, make sure you check out Play Space wherever you check out podcasts. You know what? Namely on our websites. Go to my website, reinventingmarkclarke.com. And Doc, what's your website?
PursueExcellent.com. PursueExcellent.com.
And wherever you get your podcast, we'll see you next time. New podcast every Monday and Wednesday. It's Play Space, baby. See you next time.